Hello, my name is Peter Milton and I am the developer of TimeChainage. In this short video we will look at a TimeChainage feature that can be handy if you have a large work breakdown structure, and that is the Work Breakdown Structure Code, or WBS Code for short. The WBS Code allows you to group a number of WBS values into a single WBS code value. This effectively gives you two levels of WBS. The WBS code is most useful on complex projects with a large work breakdown structure. However, for demonstration purposes, we will use a very simple project. I have the project open, so let's take a look at what this all means. To start with, we will open the WBS form. We get there by clicking on the WBS form button on the toolbar. We use the WBS form for creating a basic structure for our schedule. We can set the chart activity line colours and styles, and we can also set local chainage datums. We can then group, filter and generally organise activities based on this WBS. You will notice that there is a field for a WBS code value. So we can, if we want, allocate a WBS code to each WBS value. This effectively gives us two levels of WBS, with the WBS code being the top level. Having a hierarchical WBS, one with multiple levels, could complicate the user interface and is not actually needed for a TimeChainage chart. However, having two levels of WBS can have some benefits, and designing the software this way means you can ignore the WBS code completely if you don't feel the need to use it. I will explain what the benefits are with a couple of examples, but let's take a look at the WBS code form first. There are two ways to get to the WBS code form. One way is from the data menu in the main form. The second is from here in the WBS form. There is a button here on the toolbar that will open the WBS code form, so let's use this. This is a very simple form. We can give the code a descriptive name, and there is a table where the only field we can edit for each value is the description. The toolbar has a few controls. There is an Add New Value button and Delete Value button. The arrow buttons allow you to move the code values up and down in the table. And there are Copy and Paste buttons. The Copy button will copy the entire table to the Windows clipboard. The Paste button will replace the current contents of the table with the contents of the clipboard. This feature is useful if you prefer to work in Excel, for example. Then finally, there is the Close Form button. The WBS code values can be entered at any stage of your project. You don't need to add them at the same time as you are creating the WBS. However, it is worth thinking about how you are going to structure your program early on to give you the maximum flexibility in developing and displaying your schedule. Doing the two together will usually provide the most useful set of codes. Let's add a new code value. We will click on the last row in the table and click the Add button on the toolbar. I will enter a description of roadworks. We will now allocate some WBS values to the roadworks code. We exit this dialog by pressing the Close button on the toolbar. As we enter the WBS code form via the WBS form, we now find ourselves back in the WBS form. Here we will allocate all relevant WBS values with the WBS code value of roadworks. The value called Access Track from South Road to Compound is one such item. We will select the row by clicking anywhere on it. Then in the Details panel we open the WBS code selection box. We then select Roadworks from the drop-down list. In the table we see the ID of this value is 8. So we can now enter 8 into the WBS code field for the other road work items. and these are IDs 3, 4 and 24. Now all of the planned and actual activities that are allocated to these WBS values can be seen when using the Roadworks WBS code value. We'll demonstrate that by going to the planned form. We exit the WBS form. Now we open the planned form, and we will open the WBS code selection box and select Roadworks. Now we are showing just the activities associated with Roadworks. Let's discuss the potential uses of having this extra level of WBS. The WBS can be used for grouping activities by structure type, construction methodology, area or location, final purpose, or any other type of grouping that you might find useful. The WBS code can be used to group the WBS in exactly the same ways, so you have the option of grouping the WBS by one type and the WBS code by another grouping type. For our example, we used the WBS code simply for higher level grouping, but it could equally be used for something completely different, such as location or methodology, for example. So what are the benefits of using the WBS code? Well, it has two primary purposes. The first is it gives you more filtering flexibility in the data input forms, and the second is with filtering for the TimeChainage chart. It can save you a bit of time when creating the filters. So let's look at a couple of examples. Here in the plan form, we can filter the tasks we see in the table by using the WBS and activity code filters. However, you can only filter on a single item from each code type. First, we will clear the WBS code filter by selecting all WBS code values. Now let's open the WBS filter control. If we want to show multiple WBS values together, say all of the shaft sinking tasks, you can't do it from the WBS filter as we can only select a single value. We can, however, have a WBS code value for shaft sinking, which groups all of the WBS shaft sinking values into a single WBS code value. Now, by strange coincidence, I have already added such a code, so we will open the WBS code filter and select shaft sinking. Now we have filtered for all shaft sinking activities. Let's now leave the plan form and look at an example for chart filtering. We open the chart filter dialog from the format menu and selecting filters. We will create a new WBS filter by clicking on the new button. We can select as many items as we want here. Let's take shaft works as an example. We start by pressing the Show None button for both planned and actuals. Then we can select all of the shaft sinking and finishing values for both planned and actuals. We can now name this filter Shaft Works. And we select Hide by Default. Then we press OK to leave the filter dialog. Now that is fine and does exactly what we want. However, if you have a lot of WBS values, a quicker way of achieving the same filtering is to use the WBS code filter. Let's try this method. We click on the new button in the WBS code section to add a new filter. We then press the Show None button. Then we select just the shaft sinking and shaft finishing values. We will name this filter Shaft Works and select Hide by Default. Then press the OK button to leave the dialog. Now this WBS Code filter will do exactly the same job as the WBS filter, but was quicker to create. It works because I had previously allocated all of the WBS shaft values to the WBS Code values of shaft sinking or shaft finishing. I'll quickly demonstrate that both filters do the same thing. First, we will select the WBS filter and then exit the filter dialog. Now we just have the shaft works on display. We will go back to the filter dialog and deselect the WBS filter and select the WBS Code filter for shaft works. Then we exit the filter dialog and again we see just the shaft works. Where you have a large WBS, the WBS Code gives you more flexibility and can speed up the creation of chart filters. Well, that's it for this video. In conclusion, the WBS Code gives you a second level of WBS when you need it, but can just be ignored when you don't. Thank you for watching, and I hope that you found this video helpful. TimeChainage, adding an extra dimension to your schedules.